Welcome, everybody, to the Waterville Planning Board meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item on the agenda is approval of the January 23rd Planning Board meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, a motion by Tom. Is there a second? Second by Dave. And any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
I abstain, I wasn't here.
Disclosure of conflict of interest. Does anybody have a conflict of any votes that they're going to take tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on. Hill Hospitality is requesting a preliminary and final plan review for the construction of an 89-room hotel.
Come on, mouse. All right. All right. Let me make this bigger for y'all. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. We're hot. Excellent. Good evening. My name is Henry Hess, representing the applicant this evening. I'm a landscape architect with Sebago Technics. So the project in front of you this evening is a home to suites hotel, so 4 stories. They're proposing about 89 hotel rooms, including lobby area, indoor swimming pool, fitness center, associated site improvements, including 95 parking spaces. Access to the site is coming off Armory Road there. Two-way access with loop circulation around the building with access to the dumpster, parking, and then other services and utilities such as transformers, hydrants. Those utilities will be coming off Industrial Road or Industrial Street there, as that has been coordinated with review by city engineer as well as the sanitary district as that their preferred locations. Sanitary coming off Armory, including a grease trap interceptor for any kitchen or other items that are going to be constructed inside the hotel, and the water and electrical coming off of Industrial. According to the city ordinance, there's a requirement for 1 parking space per room in the hotel. There are 95 parking spaces proposed on site. All stormwater on the site will be treated via underground stormwater detention and treatment system. It's a subsurface sand filter. Before exiting, once it's treated, exiting the site over in the corner of Armory and Industrial there, back into the municipal system at that point. I guess that's kind of the brief overview. I'd certainly look to turn it over to the board. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you to this evening. Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
Henry, when do you expect construction to begin, and when do you think the project will be completed?
That's a great question. Right now, I think they're anticipating, they'll have to go through with, having the final building plans reviewed and building permits pulled. So they probably won't be underway until really late 2024. And I anticipate probably about a year of construction there. Yep, overall. Once they're enclosed too, most of those things happen that are, site work, everything like that, kind of get going towards those winter, spring months, and then structure can go up, and then once they're enclosed, you really don't have too much action going on. It's all inside.
I reviewed the letter from the Waterville Sewers District, and the last line said that this project was not going to connect the stormwater into the sewer system or stormwater system. Did that change at all from?
No, it didn't. That's a great question. I guess when I was stating that, it's going to be treated on site, detained, and then once we're meeting our peak rate flows, so the proposed condition matches the existing conditions for the water flows. It actually exits into a swale, and that swale does eventually lead into a culvert, but yeah, it's not exiting directly into the system. Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Ann?
Yeah, so our ordinance requires that you begin work within 1 year and complete within 2. You'll make that decision?
Yes, we will.
Any other questions? Members of the public? All right, great. Henry, we have the findings and facts. Do you have a copy in front of you?
I do have a copy, yes.
Wonderful.
Move to read by number only.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, so in the interest of time, instead of spouting off the entire thing, we'll just say number one, you say true or false.
Certainly.
Okay, so number one.
True.
Number two.
True.
Number three.
True.
Number four.
True.
Number five.
True.
Number six.
True.
Number seven.
True.
Number eight.
True.
Number nine.
True.
Okay, and then we have a list of conditions from the fire department, sanitary, and water. We still haven't gotten that letter from Jefferson. Any questions or concerns about any of?
No, I believe we can meet these conditions.
Okay. Great. I will entertain a motion to accept the findings and facts.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Okay,
Seconded.
Second by April. Any discussion about the findings and facts? Any members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Painless.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, item number 4, revisions to the zoning ordinance concerning solar farm regulations. Open it up to comments from the board.
I have a question.
Yes,
Um,
Cassie.
Regarding the, hold on, I just want to say, about the buffer around, the necessary buffer. I'm just curious how that might possibly impede, like, the line of, like, will that obstruct the sun from the solar panels?
Which section exactly is it? Sorry. Buffer was mentioned a few times. That's why I asked.
The 6-foot visual screen, is that what you're talking
No,
about?
hold on.
There's a, page 6, there's a 150-foot conditional requirements.
Sorry, guys.
Was it the developers must preserve buffers of native vegetation and mature trees?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
I'll find it.
Okay, while she's looking for that, any other comments?
I have a few.
Yes, Dave.
First, I want to say thank you to Anne for writing this up. I think it has some really good information and really good verbiage. I did have a question on page 2, up at the top of page 2, B2. This is under the land which is not appropriate for rezoning to allow solar farms, is a portion of a site meeting one or more of the following criteria. B2 says 5 or more contiguous acres of soil identified as farmland. I just want to know where the number 5 came from and why it isn't 3 contiguous acres of farmland or 2 or 1.7.
Well, I'm glad you asked. I just totally made that up. And it's a particular kind of farmland. It's farmland of statewide importance. I have some maps, but I haven't had a chance to put my thumb drive in, but I did send them to you.
Yeah.
So we have a map that shows farmland, significant farmland, and then we have statewide significant farmland. So
Yeah.
it's a smaller area than the other. So the 5 came from 2 places. You need 5, again, I just plugged it in and you can respond to it. The 5 is from, 1, that's the number of acres you need to receive the tax credit. And 2, I looked up on the Kennebec County farm census, and they show how many farms there are in the county and how large they are. So it just seemed like a reasonable number. But
Yeah,
again, I
great.
just plugged in an arbitrary number.
Yeah, no, like I said, I was just curious. I think it's a perfectly fine answer, so.
So 5 acres is what would constitute like a forever farm or something like that?
No, the idea is we were looking to preserve natural areas.
Right.
And so the irony is that you could build, if this were an industrial zone, you could just rip out all the soil and build a factory there. But that's not what we were asked to do, was decide where solar farms should be allowed.
Right.
So from that standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but
Yeah.
at least the city can do something to protect farmland through the solar farm regulation.
Do we know how many parcels of farmland we have that are 5 acres?
No, what we have is the map that I sent you,
Yeah.
and then it has a little key that shows you rectangles of different sizes. If you want to take a minute, I can try to get the.
Yeah, if you want to bring it up,
but- Or I can just pass this down, which would be a whole lot faster than
that works too.
technology.
Under B6, it says, again, this is another not appropriate for rezoning to solar farm, or to allow solar farms, is natural sites of significant scenic or aesthetic value as identified in the City of Waterville's adopted comprehensive plan. And I was curious if we have any identified in our comprehensive
That's a
plan.
very good question. We have an adopted comprehensive plan, and it does address scenic areas,
So
but I
there's a
haven't
list?
looked at it in 10 years, so.
Sure.
There's no list of specific parcels, but I think it says something about views and where you can see views on the elevations. And so we're in the process of revising our comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll have to address again. So right now, I would say that's pretty fuzzy.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I can send you that section of the current comprehensive plan, the 2014
Oh, no, I can look it up.
plan, and
I
then
just
we
didn't
can-
have a chance before the meeting today. And then the only other thing that I wanted to mention was on page 4, under decommissioning plan and performance guarantee, item number 2 says after a solar farm has ceased to produce electricity for 12 continuous months, the site must be restored to its pre-development condition. It doesn't have a time frame. So in theory, somebody could take 10 years to restore it. And I was wondering if we should adopt or
They
put
have
something
to
in there.
provide a performance guarantee, and so the city will be sitting on their money until they do restore the land. We certainly can add more language to that section. I honestly, I ran out of time.
Yeah, no.
But if
I-
it's more than 3 acres or more, the state controls that. And so we can just copy the state's language pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, because, the next section, it says if it's under 3 acres, then we can waive the performance guarantee requirement, which means kind of they really wouldn't have any financial incentive to restore the land.
Yeah, that was requested by a developer who's.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this is the map I was talking about. There's 2 different kinds of farmland identified. So it's the farmland of statewide importance, which is the lighter color on here. Maybe you could pass that down. Henry, you don't have to stay if you don't want to. Oh, you're
And is the performance guarantee, is that proportional to the amount of acreage? How does that scale with the size of the development? The money that the developer has to set aside?
Well, the plan has to explain what it is they're doing, and the developer has to come up with the cost of it.
Okay.
So the bigger the project, the higher the cost.
Yeah, and also the amount of change that they're performing to the land. If they're filling in a wet area with gravel or some kind of aggregate or loam.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
versus
don't
drop-
know
yeah.
if they have to restore wetlands. That's a very good question. But I would take a look at this, what the state is looking at.
I was just thinking, as to David's point, if the cost to remediate was greater than the amount that the developer had set aside, there'd be really no incentive, or less of an incentive to remediate if they're over, say, 10 years versus 1 year to get that money back.
Yeah, as I said, we can add language to this. I think
Okay.
one of the applicants is in a hurry to get this through the council, but certainly the planning board could send some language to the council and then suggest changes, because it has to take two council votes over 2 meetings. So there's still time to add language if you like.
Yeah, and number 3 does say, you know, we have the option, it's not automatically waived, right? So we can waive the performance guarantee, but those were all of my notes. Cassie, I don't suppose you found your,
I'm sorry. Well, no, it just was a reference to trees. Whoops. It was a reference to appropriate street trees and flowering shrubs. It's page, well, on this version, it's on the top of page 3, section B. It just says with appropriate street trees and flowering shrubs. I realize now that it's like, that's an optional. The landscape strip has to be 15 feet in width, and then it can be trees or flowering shrubs. I just wanted to, just thinking about, once trees get really tall, they obstruct sunlight, right? So, but I guess that's a little nitpicky.
I think part of it too is the buffer from the edge of the property too, right, is gonna provide enough room that it won't be blocking.
Right, well, right, but if you think about the buffer between the trail, I was just thinking about the trailer park. The buffer there was some extremely tall trees that, when they were planted, were not that tall. But I guess, I don't know,
Well,
just something that crossed my mind.
presumably a solar farm developer wouldn't plant pine trees.
Right, that's what-
There are a lot of pine trees in that.
As I was rereading it, I was like, yeah, probably that person would, right.
Yeah, I
And it
think-
is 15 feet wide, so it becomes moot at that point. It was just when I was initially reading it, the wording is just, that's what I found, but I probably wouldn't have brought it up again after I read it a second time.
That's a good point, though, because the tree height was an issue on the Webb Road solar farm that was approved. It had a southern exposure, and there was an elevation change, and they wanted the trees to be lower, which led to other unsightly, cutting down of the trees that would have blocked the sun.
Right.
Yeah.
Just, that's sort of where they just seem to leave it open, but it looks like the way it's worded is it's optional. Appropriate trees and flowering shrubs. Who determines what the appropriate ones? I'm assuming the developer determines that.
You do.
The planning
Oh,
board.
we do?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a case by case.
During site
So-
plan review, right?
All right.
Yeah, so the rest of the ordinance has sections that control screening. So you could go to those sections.
Right. I saw the stockade fences.
That is something, yeah, as you know, everything underlined is new language. And that's new language there, to screen the interstate. Typically, when the ordinance says screening along the street, we're talking about a local street. I don't think the planning board has ever interpreted the interstate as being a street, but this language does say that a fence can be required along the interstate. So that's new.
April.
I'm seeing language here about the vernal pools. It's saying that they're going to be identified during site plan review. Who's going to identify them? How does that work?
The developer is going to have to, because he has to identify wetlands anyway. Yeah, so just this afternoon, I received a new map from IF&W, and yeah, they pointed out that there was a vernal pool identified when the city had, no, it wasn't the city, but city is leasing land on the airport for a solar farm, and the developer there identified a vernal pool.
Okay.
That was during the, well, I guess actually before the construction. Sometimes they find them after the construction starts. That the one down on Webb Road on the west side of the interstate, they did some mapping after they got planning board approval, and then they came back again and revised their plan because of what they found when they were walking around more seriously.
Do they have any incentive to be such honest folks? Is Fish and Wildlife, is this a Fish and Wildlife question? If they don't, if one is discovered and they continue construction, is there a consequence?
I'm sure there is. They're protected. So
Right, okay.
I can't imagine that IF&W doesn't have some stick they use.
Right.
But I couldn't swear to it.
So I was wondering if maybe, because vernal pools can be tricky to identify, just because of seasonality. I mean, is there,
Are you asking if we can hold them up for a year to wait for
I
the
know,
spring
that's the
again?
tricky part, right? That's it, right? So, I mean, like, go in there and make sure that at the right time, otherwise they're gonna miss it, and then they start construction, it's gonna cost them more, I think, right?
Talking about the significant vernal pools.
Yeah. Right here. So, I mean, they should be looking for them when they're identifiable, which is in the spring. I mean, is there any precedent anywhere in city planning for like having things seasonal? So, I mean, like if it was a vernal pool issue, to say, if there's wetlands or vernal pool, like if, it can be difficult to say, I guess, if there's like.
What determines a significant one versus?
No, I was just wondering if there's like, if this could mean that there would be a solar farm zoning season. Like, right, like you have to do these environmental assessments, and so that they have to happen in this time frame. So, is it not done?
I can contact IF&W again, if you like. Yeah, again, I said, I don't know whether you would hold them up or.
So IF&W doesn't do, we don't have like a map of vernal pools like we would
Well, we have this-
wetlands,
We have this.
but then some more are discovered. Is that the issue here?
This one on the airport was
Yeah.
discovered because of that solar farm. There was one on the Seaton property, and they discovered that when they were looking at wetlands, where they were mapping for future development. Let's see. I think those are the only two that have been identified in the city. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute, what is this? Schwartz Winslow.
I mean,
don't
on
have-
a
you
lot
don't
of the
have to worry about it.
privately held properties, you're not gonna know until you go in to do something like a solar farm. Right? Isn't that, I mean,
Right, yeah. I just don't know how we would regulate that, or whether
yeah.
IF&W does, or whether, once they find a certain amount of wetland, then DEP will be involved, and Army Corps will be involved, and
Okay.
yeah, I don't know how to regulate that unless you want to say, no solar farms can be developed until after the spring.
Yeah, or, yeah.
Would we know, given the variability of the weather, would we know to be able to set a date and say, don't be digging in the dirt until after April 15th or May 20th or something like that? I don't know.
Right, well, I mean, so the critical species that require these vernal pools, they don't hang around, right? Like, they lay their eggs and then they kind of move off. So I think that there would be a window that could be defined there. But, yeah.
Well, I can check with IF&W and see what they have to say about that.
Sure.
They have, in their literature that I read, the language was very, very vague. But I'll read it again. Or you could read it.
I can read it,
Yeah.
sure. Right.
And I see on the map with the farmland that you just distributed, they separate hay pasture or pasture versus farmland. And you could make the argument that pasture land or hay or could be used as farmland for wheat or other similar crops
Yeah.
to the hay. And would it be worth trying to include pasture area as well as prime farmland in the ordinance?
You certainly can
Yeah.
if you want to. You can put anything into the ordinance you want. But I have no idea of the quality of the soil. If they're growing something
Yeah.
there, I would guess it's not bad soil, but
Just looking at the available land that's undeveloped at this point, which could be potential for solar. The hay and cultivated crop land is a significant percent.
Okay, well, I guess if we want any changes made in the ordinance that we want to send to the council, we should make motions, formal motions to add or subtract.
I did just find in the document that IF&W sent over, they recommend that surveys for vernal pools be conducted by qualified wetland scientists prior to final project design to determine whether there are SVPs present in the project area. So I think it would be really easy for us to put in our ordinance that we require a survey to be submitted that was conducted by a qualified wetland scientist.
okay. Would you let me wordsmith that after the meeting and?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that a formal motion?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Okay.
I hate to bring this up again, but the the wording for the buffer in C1B does say a landscaping strip at 15 feet in width along the street line, including the interstate, and then it says trees and flowering shrubs, and then it specifically references trees. I'm trying to visualize like every other solar, like in Fairfield, drive through Fairfield and you have all these solar arrays on farmland right next to the street. There are no buffers. I'm trying to visualize how you have 15-foot wide strip of trees that aren't going to be obstructed, potentially obstruct the sun. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can word that so that we don't have to have the conversation every single time somebody wants to talk about this, every time, every time they're bringing up solar farms. Do I have to plant trees? Like, trees get tall, who maintains them? Like, it seems like
Yeah, I think
we have that kind of-
that it's in there because the council is specifically concerned about.
us having to look
Yeah.
at things, which I totally get. Maybe,
But this doesn't say what variety of tree they have to plant, so obviously they can choose varieties that
just like
don't
scenic trees that
get
don't,
as tall.
Well,
Yeah.
to me, the key word there is appropriate, right? They need to pick appropriate trees that are going to work for their solar farm and for our visual buffer. So,
right, okay. Okay, just saying, had a lot of meetings where we've had to have the same kind of conversation over and over again because of things that aren't super specific. I didn't know if there was additional language we could add that might offer a different buffer option besides trees.
Surprisingly, we have 5 solar farms now, plus one that's been approved, and I don't recall that any of them have made a fuss about that requirement. So
Okay.
I'm surprised, too.
Okay.
But
All right. Sounds good.
I don't
Time
know
will tell,
whether
I
they're
guess.
planning to cut the trees when they get bigger.
Right.
But I guess the code enforcement officer said at one point, well, they can cut the trees and then plant new trees. That, again, the new trees will be shorter. and
Okay.
They still will be complying with the ordinance.
All right. Okay, that makes
Takes
sense.
trees a long
Like,
time to grow
yeah.
too, and these are only good for like 30 years.
Well, some trees, well, right, whatever. I'm sure the developers will pick the right kind
No
of trees.
pine
but
trees.
I'm just thinking about places that already have trees where, I don't know. All right, I'll let it go.
Any other?
I'm still wondering if we should add something to the decommissioning plan to put, that it has to be restored to its pre-development condition within a certain amount of time.
You think 24 months would be?
That's actually the number I had in my head. I just think it would be good to put something in there.
What section is
It's
decommissioned?
page 4,
page
section
4.
D,
Down at the bottom.
section 2.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is your proposed, what did you propose, your proposed change to that?
We'd like to have the remediation completed within 24 months.
Yeah, within 24 months.
Oh, kind of.
Okay, we have a motion and a
That's
second.
That's 30-year timeframe. Right.
Well, it's.
Yeah,
if
I mean,
it-
typically
it's up
solar,
to-
typically
yeah.
solar farms are about 30 years. I know the one that I bought last year, it was 30 years is what they're kind of saying, so,
But it says if it hasn't produced
Right, for
electricity in
20,
12
right.
months.
right.
Yeah, I'll,
Okay, all those in favor of that addition? Okay,
So 24 months within the time of,
after the 12 months?
after the 12
Yeah.
months.
So
Right.
3 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see it right at the end of that sentence, to its pre-development condition within 24 months.
Okay.
I think, how,
Well, the city would refund the developer their remediation money. So if they don't complete it, then I assume the city would not give them the refund?
Can the city,
They also can fine them, the code enforcement
Right.
office
Yep.
can fine them.
Right.
can the city use those funds if the company leaves or dissolves in some way to remediate themselves? Or like, are we free to use funds in escrow in that way? I mean, you don't know.
I don't know.
I was just a question, I mean, I
Brian's
don't know.
not here.
I was just asking how things work. I don't know.
Do we want to be sued or not?
That would be probably illegal.
That's illegal. Okay, no, I'm just.
No, it's a legal question.
A legal
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Not illegal, but
I don't know.
a.
I just asked the questions, okay. Yeah. So,
It's a great question for the city council to ask, Councilor Green.
Just a lot can happen in 30 years. Companies can go out of business, people die, like,
Yeah.
how do you enforce that? But that's
Yeah.
okay.
right.
Yeah, actually, it now that you bring that up, it did actually make me wonder about under decommissioning subsection 3. This is where we're talking about if it's smaller than 3 acres, if the solar farm is smaller than 3 acres, that the planning board can waive the requirement of the performance guarantee if the developer of the solar farm is the owner of the land. And it's one of those things where I question, what if in the future they're not the owner of the land? What if they sell the land and not the solar farm, or there's some sort of
But
inheritance of?
somebody would be buying it with the knowledge that there's a solar farm on it, and they
Yeah.
would have to decommission it. So it's not saying that they don't have to go through the decommissioning process. We just don't hold their money.
Yeah. Seems like 3 acres is still a really big solar farm to me.
That's why we have our own regulations.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can pick and choose. So if it's a 2,000 square foot solar farm, maybe we say, yeah, don't worry about the performance guarantee. But if it's one that's 2.9 acres, we say, yeah, no, we still want one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know how big the typical 5 megawatt or under solar farm is that we've approved in Waterville?
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember, but I have it in this file, if I can find the page fast. I made oh, wow. It was right near the top, because I thought somebody might ask. Okay, ooh. Okay, the KSTD solar farm isn't all that large, but 4.75 acres were disturbed in the construction process. So, but then I think they revegetated. I'm not really quite sure what that was about. Maybe leveling the land or something like that. The next grid project at 101 Webb Road says it's 18 acres. But that's the parcel size. I don't know. No, I guess I don't know the answer to your question. We can figure it out with an aerial photo. I do have somewhere in here.
Do you have on
an
there
aerial.
how big the solar farm was on 8 Rod Road? But it butts Punky Meadows. 'Cause that was a hay field.
Okay, this is, let's see, 15 acres.
15 acres.
But that includes some wetland streams, that kind of thing. It's not 15
Yeah.
acres of panels, so it's kind of hard to calculate it because they don't necessarily put the panels in a rectangular pattern.
Right.
I had actually
But we can
Googled this,
figure
but
it
I
out.
forgot the answer. So a 1 megawatt solar farm requires 6 to 8 acres on average.
6 to 8 acres
per
To
per,
8
Megawatt.
per megawatt.
per,
Megawatt of output.
okay.
Yep.
And almost all the projects we see are under 5 megawatts.
And that, I asked the city assessor about that, and it has to do with taxation. The state pays for the taxes if they're 5 or under.
And I have no idea what date this was. This says it was January 2023, but I'm sure as time goes on,
Theoretically, it could.
right, the amount of acres per megawatt should go down, but.
But again, you have different land features,
Right.
like wetlands, they work around the wetlands, they work around the, so they could be using a much bigger parcel, but just not putting panels on very much of it.
Okay, any further discussion?
I have two
Yeah.
more things, sorry. Okay, so I have a question about the undisturbed habitat wildlife blocks, or wildlife habitat blocks, sorry. So these are privately owned parcels, and owners can do whatever they'd like to do within their right on that parcel, which could make it uninviting or uninhabitable to certain wildlife before they apply for a solar farm. So I don't know, so when I'm looking at whatever this is, which one is it? Just a solar farm siting, page 2, under B, number 1. I wouldn't want to create some sort of perverse incentive for somebody to destroy wildlife habitat before applying for a solar farm. I don't know if there's some sort of timer we can put on it. I don't know how that would work, like, you know, in the past 5 years, if the parcel has been identified as having this habitat on it, then, you know, you're not eligible. Like, eligibility means that you have to be, you know, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are state laws that protect that, even on private land. So,
Okay.
Well, part of the
Probably
problem is the
federal laws, too.
information we have, some of it is from aerial photography, and so I don't know how much field checking was done. But I think the lady who sent this map today seemed happy with this, so maybe they do feel comfortable with their mapping.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you make sure that, yeah. I've seen, you know, even when they would run afoul of the feds, I guess then it wouldn't matter if they were willing to do that, they would get around us too. Anyway, sorry, thinking out loud.
yeah.
Well, the city can, through its comprehensive planning process, identify lands that the city wants to preserve, and then we can budget money to buy easements or, you know, request to buy easements there. The current comprehensive plan states that we want to preserve natural areas, but there aren't specific areas, aside from a map like this, there aren't specific parcels listed for preservation. So I think we really have to work through the comprehensive plan to protect land in advance.
Okay. I don't want to cut anybody short on that. I was gonna say my second thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Go
go
for
for
it.
it. Oh, God.
Mike's yours.
Okay, so just a question on the sort of solar installations that we're talking about. I think maybe you would know, I'm not sure. So I was reading some of the literature, and there was some objection to it, or a problem that had happened out west with someone who had installed a solar collector. And these solar collectors focus light onto a central sort of receiver, and then it heats up some sort of fluid kind of as a storage device. I am not well versed on how this works. This is my best take on it. But that these things have their own kind of environmental impacts. and, you know, have their own wildlife impacts. And I don't, when we talk about these solar leasing situations, are we talking about a very particular kind of solar farm? Or do we need to have language in there to say like, only this particular kind of solar farm is gonna be allowed?
I would add to that,
Well-
I would say I'd limit the height of the solar array, so it can't be 30 feet tall. I mean,
Yeah, the
most of the
collector
ones,
would be
most of the
tall.
ground collectors that we see here are 8 feet or under, I'd say. Sometimes you see the really large sun tracking panels that can be 20, 25 feet.
That was the one that.
And, yeah,
out
and then the
west
solar
that caused the
thermal, which
problem.
is what you're discussing out west, those can be 100+ feet high with the central collector.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they're very significant. I don't think you're gonna see those here.
No.
But I would have a restriction on height, a maximum height that the solar farm can be above the ground. I'm not sure which section we could add that in, but maybe it's screening and solar farm. I'm thinking it's the maximum height. I don't know where we should put that, but the array cannot exceed.
It's hard to know without
Yeah.
knowing what,
Yeah.
like what your typical,
Yeah.
like, are you talking about like when the panel's tilted or like
I mean, I've
just
seen the tilting panels. I saw them today actually, and I'd say they're not more than 10 feet above the ground at maximum tilt to get you a late afternoon westerly exposure. When they're flat, maybe they're 5 feet off the ground at
Okay.
midday. But you see some of the very large panels, like the tracking
Yeah,
panels.
right.
That
They're
can
huge.
be 20, 25 feet, and you wouldn't want to have that in a neighborhood. The screening wouldn't make any difference at that point.
right.
Yeah.
There we go. Full circle.
So on page 6, you know, we do have some definitions around what we're talking about. And and it says it's ground-mounted solar arrays, which, you know, I'm not sure that specific type of solar collector would fit that definition.
Okay.
We do have a definition of solar farm in the definition section of the zoning ordinance. And
Yeah.
I put that at the top of the page the first page. So this is every section of the zoning ordinance that refers to solar farms or controls solar farms in some way.
Yeah, I think you might be talking about like pole-mounted solar or something. It's like a
Yeah.
little bit different than
Okay.
ground-mounted.
Okay. It's considered pole mounted. That makes
Okay,
sense.
so this covers it then, by saying it's ground-mounted solar. That's fine.
Okay.
Great. Anything else? Anything from members of the public? Okay. I will entertain a motion to accept the ordinance to send to the planning board as amended.
Send to the city council.
That's what I meant. We're the planning board.
Seconded?
Okay.
Make a motion?
Yeah,
What am
sure.
I doing? Making a motion.
Yeah.
Let's
April
do it.
motioned.
Tom
Is there a
seconded.
second? Tom second. All those in favor? There we go. Motion to adjourn.
Do it. Second.